Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is, wherever you are, it is right now. You're right here. My name is Manuel, and it's my pleasure to welcome you. Today is day 37 of the show, and I have to congratulate you for making the best decision of the day to spend some time with me. Let's get started. And right off the bat, let me tell you, strap yourself in because this is going to be a heck of a ride. So, a couple of weeks ago on this podcast, I said something very simple and direct. Jasmine Crockett is cooked. At the time, some of you probably thought I was exaggerating or just trying to be funny. Maybe some of you thought it was just political trash talk. Well, last night, the Democrat voters of Texas declared that I was right. With over 90% of the vote in, Jasmine Crockett didn't just lose the Democratic primary, she lost by 7 points. 7! In modern politics, that's basically a landslide. Not a squeaker, not too close to call. The voters looked at that ballot and said, "Hit the bricks, lady." So, yes, let me repeat it for the record. Jasmine Crockett is cooked. Now, to understand how spectacular this flameout is, you have to look at how fast she rose. Her entire political career basically happened in the time it takes most congressmen just to learn where the bathrooms are in the Capitol. She was first elected to the Texas House of Representatives in 2020, not exactly a long time ago. So, naturally, before she even finished that first 2-year term, she was already announcing she was running for Congress. And, look, to her credit, in 2022, she wins a seat in the U.S. House. Then, she wins again in 2024. Afterwards, she seemed to be everywhere. Clips of her always being the loudest, most aggressive voice in the room went viral, and the media loved her. Lots of cable news attention. But somewhere along the way, something dangerous to all politicians happened to her. She started believing the hype. She believed the propaganda. She believed the applause. And when that happens in politics, that's when the trap gets set. Because applause is not the same thing as support. And sure enough, Jasmine walked right into the most obvious trap imaginable. You see, people started flooding her office with calls encouraging her to run for Senate instead of running for re-election in the House. Run for Senate! You're the future of the party! You're the rising star! And instead of asking obvious questions like, wait a second, who are these people that are so excited about this? And why am I suddenly getting so much support? She just told herself she really was as amazing as she thought. Sadly for her, all those callers, it was actually an organized effort by Republicans to bait her into giving up her safe seat in the House and run as a long shot for Senate. And she fell for it. She gave up her House seat and rolled the dice on a statewide race in Texas. And that's when things started going sideways. Because the moment that really changed the momentum was the one we talked about a couple weeks ago. James Talarico and the Late Show with Stephen Colbert. You see, Talarico was scheduled to appear on Colbert's show. Then the segment got pulled. Now, cue the media drama. Cue the false claims of pressure from the Trump administration. Cue the oppression narrative. But then Colbert drops the interview online, and it explodes. 5 million views almost instantly. 5 million. That's not a niche political clip. That's a rocket to the moon, baby. And suddenly, the dynamic of the race changes. Instead of Crockett being the loudest voice in the room, the oxygen starts flowing somewhere else. And that's when the weakness of her entire political brand became obvious. And all it took was Stephen Colbert putting his thumb on the scale. Because Crockett's brand was never really about persuasion. It was about volume, being the loudest, the most aggressive, the most confrontational, the most theatrical. Always trying to suck all the oxygen out of the room. And look, that can work for a while. It works great on social media. It works great in viral clips. It works great when the goal is applause from your own side. But when voters are actually choosing a nominee, suddenly people start asking a different question. who actually represents us well. And apparently, the Democrat voters of Texas looked at Jasmine Crockett and decided, ha, not her. Now, the truly funny part came after the results started rolling in, because good old Jasmine has a very predictable habit. Whenever something goes wrong, it is never her fault. Never. The blame always goes somewhere else. Usually racism, usually misogyny, usually some giant conspiracy that explains why the universe is failing to appreciate her greatness. But this time she had a problem. Her own party rejected her. So, you see, she couldn't exactly accuse Democratic voters of racism and misogyny. That would be just a little bit awkward. So, instead, she came up with a new theory. She tightened her tinfoil hat and declared the reason she lost the Texas Democratic primary was because Republicans cheated. Yeah, Republicans cheated in the Democratic primary. How? Well, nobody seems to know, but apparently out there, shadowy Republicans were infiltrating Democratic ballots like political ninjas. Sure, okay, that's got to be it. It couldn't possibly be that voters simply decided they were tired of her act. Because to me, that's what it really looks like. Fatigue. Fatigue with the outrage, fatigue with the theatrics, fatigue with the constant accusation that anyone who disagrees with you must be a bigot. People eventually tune that out. And once voters tune you out, your political career has an expiration date. Which brings us back to the phrase that started this whole conversation. Jasmine Crockett is cooked. She rose fast, she believed the hype, she flew way too close to the sun, and now she has crashed and burned in spectacular fashion. Look, political comebacks do happen, but they're very rare. And when your entire brand is built on being the loudest voice in the room, it's very hard to reinvent yourself as something else. So, where does she go from here? Who knows? Probably cable news, maybe a panel seat somewhere, maybe a guest chair on The View. That career path seems to me pretty on brand for her. But as far as electoral politics go, well, the voters just delivered their answer, and it wasn't subtle. Jasmine Crockett is cooked. Now, before we go, let's end with a little lesson. Something you can use not just in politics but in life. Applause can fool you. When people cheer you on long enough, you start believing that applause equals support. But applause is cheap. Real support shows up when people actually have to make a choice. And if you start believing your own hype before that moment comes, you might just find yourself flying too close to the sun only to crash and burn. All right, that's enough for today. We'll continue tomorrow. And as always, be useful.